everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host, the dancing Alex Ashlow.
Oh, boy.
More primaries are in the books. What did we learn? Alex is on the ground in Alabama as we record this. Doug Jones had a huge night, and yeah, the autopsy from the DNC finally leaked. I promise, we'll spend some time on that. And
I didn't leak it. I did not leak it.
What's going on with Trump's $1.8 billion slush fund? Yeah, $1.8 billion. And I didn't leak it either, but I did. I was interviewed by Paul Rivera. I think very, very highly of him. And we can get into that. But Alex, where do you want to get started first?
Well, let's talk about primaries. There have been a bunch in the last week. Saturday, Bill Cassidy lost in Louisiana. Trump went really hard after him. And then the big one Tuesday night was Thomas Massie lost in Kentucky in his congressional primary. I think Trump and Trump Constellation allies spent like $40 million to beat him. Joe, this was, I'm not going to call it like a show of force for Trump and the GOP, but like he can still win a GOP primary, right?
Well, no, of course he can do that. But the real key was the numbers. I mean, it was just atrocious. Barely 50%, not even in most of those races. In fact, they're all in runoffs. So he didn't, the people, yes, did you defeat Cassidy? Sure. Did you defeat Massie? Of course he did. But he didn't get 50%. Or at least for sure in the Cassidy thing, and so what you've got is literally, even if you did get 50%, that's what I'm saying. Like literally half of the party said no, we're not going along with you, and so they're runoffs in the Cassidy race in Louisiana. And you have to ask yourself, will the folks that voted for Massie, the folks that voted for Cassidy,
are they coming
actually
back?
Show up? That's what I'm saying. So it's like, yeah, you won, but you blew your party up in doing it. You can run around and brag about that, but I'm not sure that in the end it's going to turn out to have worked.
Well, I want to get to Alabama. As you mentioned, I am here right now, actually buried in the campaign headquarters somewhere right now. But you've been saying it.
I've been there with you, bro.
I've been saying it. You've been on the other side of the screen. But the energy has been just phenomenal. I mean, everywhere you go, people literally stopping Doug Jones in the streets saying, "I voted for you." And by the way, in 2017, it was, "Don't tell anyone, but I voted for you." This time it's, "I voted for you." It's really interesting. But Tuesday night, and I want to give our listeners some context here. So first of all, Doug Jones won with like 79% of the vote. Easy primary for him, as we all expected. But
it was very tough. Alex did an incredible job, people.
When you look into the turnout numbers, it paints a fuller picture. First of all, on the Republican side here in Alabama, it was a civil war. There were like 8 to 10 really hotly contested races. A couple of interest groups came in to try to take out any pro-gambling Republicans, and there were like 8 or 10 very highly contested primaries. I think 8 incumbents lost in the House and Senate, and there was a Senate race. So you add up the literally millions, close to $10 million of spending that happened on the Republican side, and their overall turnout was down 25% from 2022.
With massive spending. With
a ton of spending. Normally, when you hear those, huge spending numbers and contested primaries, everyone's trying to get out to vote. Turnout fell off a cliff. Meanwhile, Democrats doubled from 2022. So look at one more sign.
It was a little bit better. It was 116% turnout of Democrats and a 25% decrease of Republicans. And again, the opposite thing was true. Probably less money spent on the Democratic side. Not a whole lot.
We bought some yard signs.
Yeah, we did, but not a whole lot. And on the Republican side, as Alex said, millions were spent. And when you have millions spent on both sides, two people in a Republican primary fighting it out, go vote for me, make sure you stop the MAGA or you stop uh, the traitor or whatever the hell's going on. Normally you get turnout on both sides of that. They actually had a drop. And on the Democratic side, where for the first time there was a full ticket of people running for governor, lieutenant governor. I mean, Doug Jones really recruited a pretty incredible team, a change ticket that did not spend a lot of money. I mean, obviously, we thought Doug would win that primary, but the fact that that many people, I mean, twice, more than doubled the turnout from the last gubernatorial primary in Alabama is just, it mirrors what's going on around the country, that we're seeing this massive Democratic energy. We will see where independents are in the general, but the Democratic energy in Alabama versus the Republican kind of decline in energy
Right.
from the last time around is pretty significant. We've been seeing that, as you know, big Democratic overperformance in specials and other things. We'll see how that works out. But right now, all signs are Alabama is in play, as are other places like Florida. I'm telling you, folks, don't go to sleep on any of these races. We started in Iowa. We said don't go to sleep in Iowa on the Iowa race for governor, Senate, and some of the House races there. I think all of those are in play. Florida, screw the redistricting. The same thing is going on there. Both Jolly and Vindman are ahead against their Republican opponents in Florida. And I think as they do the redistricting there, you're going to see some of those seats weakened for the Republicans. So we're seeing that in Texas as well. But in Alabama, when you look at what Alex is talking about, the 8 state house seats and Senate races, where incumbent Republicans were defeated in a civil war, which I think is break. You see with Massie, you see with Cassidy, and we're seeing it actually in Texas too, where Trump has now endorsed Paxton
Yeah.
over Cornyn, and that's creating all kinds of problems for him in the Senate, with a lot of senators finally starting to go, wait a minute. But we'll see where this all goes. But there's a civil war breaking out on their side. I can tell you from being involved in the Civil War in 1980 with Kennedy versus Carter, and this isn't a presidential year, but when you have these kind of civil wars break out in a party, it's not good for the party that's having one. And this one is clearly broken out. And you see independents before this war inside the Republican Party already bolting from it and from the chaos and moving towards with some soft Republicans too, moving with Democrats and independents to really, I think, create that change wave, not a blue wave, a change wave that's going to include a lot of Republicans and
I mean,
independents.
for our listeners, if you think back to the 2016 Democratic primary, ended up being real bitter, and a lot of Bernie supporters stayed home. That never really kind of reconciled with Hillary being the nominee. 2020, totally different story. I remember Bernie hugging Joe Biden on stage and doing everything he could to support him, and ended up winning. So in our very, very recent past, there have been multiple times when a contentious primary bleeds over into a general, and it really hurts that party. Speaking of contentious, Joe, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because enough ink has been spilled. The DNC autopsy was finally released. I don't think it was intentional. It was leaked. Then now all of a sudden, I think Ken Martin came out and said, now we can get past it now that it's out. And that's not really how our party and the media do things, Joe. But in terms of getting past things quickly.
Well, two things. One, it
what do you
was
think?
intentional. There's no way this was an accident. They leaked it to CNN. And I think Ken Martin leaked it to CNN, whether he says so or not, I don't care. But there's no way. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We just got our hands on this thing that no one that no. It was leaked. The one thing I would say is like I haven't delved into it a lot. I was interviewed by Paul Rivera for the what went wrong, what's your take, etc. I can tell you what I said. I said, look, our party they have they invest and own things, and we rent. And I've been saying this on this show, on the podcast for a while. They own Fox, they own Sinclair, they own Nexstar, they own Sinclair goes and buys the Baltimore Sun. They own all the media. Buying the CBS. They're now CBS and CNN. We rent. And we buy ads on X, we buy ads on Facebook, we buy ads on Sinclair affiliates in every market in the country and Nexstar affiliates. Many of them are, by the way, ABC, CBS local affiliate. They some of them are independent stations, but most of them are between Nexstar and Sinclair. They're in every market essentially in the country, and they're just spewing the same right wing bullshit. As news, by the way. And so we buy ads on those stations. They take that money and then they buy more media, like the chairman of Sinclair buying the Baltimore Sun. So, I mean, there were a lot of things I went into, but that was my major thing. I have a lot of respect for Paul Rivera. He and I've been in the trenches together in the past. I thought he was a good selection for Ken Martin to go to talk to people and put the thing together. Again, I haven't had a lot of time to review it, but I don't believe it was accidental. I think it was just like we'll get it out there and then let's move on.
Well, we will try. It's been a rough week for Trump, so probably, he's probably happy that some of the attention was off. Let's talk about a little bit of that rough week. So while we were getting ready for this show, this is breaking as we're recording this on Thursday, the slush fund that Trump set up to just pay off all the January 6ers, all the victims of government overreach or whatever, is completely blowing up the Senate. This is from Andrew Desiderio on Twitter. Nearly 2-hour meeting with Todd Blanche and Senate Republicans was incredibly hostile. As many as 25 GOP senators spoke. This is very rare for those meetings, all in opposition to the weaponization fund. Text from a Senate Republican: our majority is melting down before our eyes. Joe, and I should just add, they literally stopped Senate business. They sent the Senate home. They sent the House home. There are a couple pretty important votes supposed to happen in the next couple days. They have ground Republican business in Congress to a halt. What do you think, man?
Yeah. Right after January 6th, they all said this was horrible. This is terrible. And then within a couple of hours, they were all a couple of days, they were all like, yeah, it was okay. He must have had a good reason. So we'll see how this, how this takes shape. I'm not holding my breath that they're not all going to cave. There are some signs that they won't, but, we'll see. I'm not going to hold my breath. That's what I thought. We all thought that January 7th, January 8th, they've come to their senses. That's not what's going on.
No.
And this won't do it either. The one interesting thing about this, and particularly the part of it, the whole IRS thing, where Trump, gets, basically, no immunity on anything he did on tax, and the IRS can't come after him, on his settlement and all that stuff. And that's part of this. I think we're all focused on this. We're all focused on those folks, getting the slush fund. Of course, Trump will, take a big chunk of it for himself. Because of all the harm that was done by taking a look at him. The interesting thing about all this is the more we focus on, the IRS this, the IRS that, or the, slush fund, and the IRS won't be auditing any of these people or him, there's a problem with this logic, which I'm going to put out there. And that is, yeah, maybe the IRS can't audit these people, but the state of New York can. The state of New York can audit Donald Trump's taxes that he paid in New York. California can. So what I think is, like, we fixate and go, oh my gosh, you know, what's happening with the slush fund? What's happening with this agreement with the IRS? With the settlement. And I think what we miss is the power of states, attorney general, and other folks in these states, prosecutors at the in the criminal prosecution in the in the states of New York, in California and Massachusetts. And by the way, if you're making $1 billion transactions out there, they cross state lines. The state can audit that stuff. And the attorney generals in those states can bring criminal prosecutions. And so, yeah, I understand, how immediately the slush fund and the weaponization stuff makes us all, rightfully so, sound the alarm. But I would be very careful if you're a member of the Trump administration or Donald Trump or Todd Blanche or, by the way, Pam Bondi, because Pam Bondi is not in the administration anymore. She too can be audited or criminally investigated at the state level. And because she did things nationally, any state can bring those. Right. And by the way, the same thing for all these billionaire dudes who think, oh yeah, we'll do pay for play. Any state in the country can go after those guys. And I think we're starting to see the formation, the arguments opening up beyond. I mean, I know what they're trying to do at the quote federal level. A slush fund, a amnesty from the IRS or a settlement with the IRS. That's great, but when you're audited by states, which every like state can do, and I'm sure Alabama won't, but because of the attorney general there will go along with whatever the hell Donald Trump says. But I think they've opened themselves up, and I think I think that is probably the biggest development that might come out of all this.
Well, by the way, he was attempting to run for Senate and did not make it into a runoff. He came in third in a 3-person race. So Alabama's attorney general, it will not be the next senator from Alabama. Joe, I hear you. It's going to be a shorter episode today. I know you and I are both on the road. I did want to point out something. And 25 Republican senators revolting today, fine. Trump winning a couple primaries, fine. But if you zoom out, and this is a new Fox News poll that I kind of just had to chuckle at, Trump is at an all-time low within the Republican Party. Yeah, he won his primaries, or a couple of them. 80% approval rating with Republicans. This is historically, he's in the high 90s.
Yeah.
And now,
well, everybody is. I mean, you're always in the high 90s in your party, usually if you're president, but drifting into the 80s or even high 70s, not good. Non-MAGA Republicans are at 54% approval. That's it's happening everywhere. White voters and rural voter approval is down to 43%. Which is crazy. He's now -6 with whites, -5 with white men who don't have college degrees, -7 overall with Republicans. It's all economy, affordability, and it's tanking them. And you look at the economic disapproval, 71%. That's up from 66% in April.
Well, and
So
actually,
you've
that's a good
got,
one because it's tracking exactly.
yeah.
If you look
Well,
at
we've been
where he's
pointing this stuff
fallen,
out
five,
for
six
months.
points. Yeah, with
Yeah,
each
we
demographic group, and then you see the economy disapproval number is almost exactly matching where he is inversely with everything else. Like,
yeah.
it's not good.
51% say their family's finances are worse than 2 years ago. And so, in 20 before the 2022 midterms, that was at 44%. So yeah, it's gone up 8 points or so, 7, 8 points. I just think that you're look, we've been talking about how independents started bolting right after the Epstein stuff and kept bolting through tariffs, Minneapolis, and now the war. And by the way, gas prices are going up every day. I think it's like at 4.55 today or 4.58 a gallon, and that's up from last week. It's going to continue. It's going to continue to get worse. So, and I think it's going to accelerate now because there's no. I mean, I know. Hey, they want a deal. Iran wants a deal. Alex, have I told you? Have you heard that Iran wants a deal?
And I
Yeah.
believe Trump said rising gas prices yesterday were peanuts. So,
Peanuts, and that he
uh,
doesn't really care about
yeah,
no.
the
And
economic. Yeah,
I'll
I
put
don't
it in
think about
context.
the.
He doesn't really look at the economic pain that people are going through. All he cares about is making sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. And some of us point out that according to him, we obliterated their ability to have a nuclear weapon several months ago, before we even got into this. So and that's what I'm saying. I think everybody, save the dwindling MAGA base, is now calling bullshit. They get it. He's full of shit. And unfortunately, we're all living with the results in terms of people struggling to make ends meet. I think Medicare and healthcare is going to get much worse here. And we've got other things coming up, which I'm sure we'll get to in future episodes. But no, I think, and again, I'll say this: if it's a fair fight in November, the Democrats will win the Senate and the House. The thing we need to get ready for is they will again, I think, accelerate even more the overreach to mess with the elections, to create trouble, to have ICE in the streets in front of polling places, particularly in Hispanic communities. They're going to try to knock out every black representative in the United States Congress in their seats. They're going to do everything, and that's why we can't be like, oh wow, look at this energy on the Democratic side. We're going to win. No, we need to make that happen, but we have to be vigilant, and every American has to be ready to stand up and fight in this election and make sure it's not taken away, because they are going to try.
Well, I know we have a ton of questions from listeners, and some were emailed, some were in the comments on our post. I promise we will get to them when Joe and I are a little less frazzled. Joe, that's a great place for us to wrap. And like I said, we'll catch up on questions next week.
Yeah, Alex was up all night last night. He was in Alabama in the middle of the election there. Great job, everybody on the Jones team. 80% or near 80% win is pretty big. And again, the energy there. Do not go to sleep on Iowa, Alabama, or Florida. A lot of people are starting to pay attention to these key governors' races, that where governors are going to have more power to save us in this fight as we move forward in past 2026 into 2028. That's going to be pretty important. So where you can, focus there, send these folks some money, get involved, help them out. In the meantime, thanks everyone for listening to or watching That Trippi Show. Make sure to join us at sez.us. It's a civil social network for real people, not bots or algorithms. This podcast will always be free and is part of Lincoln Square. So check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media, where we've got plenty of really incredible, I think, and newsworthy, pieces of information and shows. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. And as Alex said, you can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in the review on iTunes. And Alex and I will be right back at you when we see you next week.